Night of the Zealot. Prologue. The Ghoul's Hunger. Friday, September 18th, 1925. Arkham, Massachusetts. It is the end of a long and abnormally hot summer. The first hints of autumn beckon, but a heavy heat persists relentless. A silent, unspoken anger grips the town. Tempers are short, and in the last week alone there have been numerous reports of townspeople coming to heated, violent blows with one another over simple misunderstandings. And now a call from James Hankerson. He claims to have found a dismembered body in his barn. Blaming the weather would be too easy. There is something wrong with this town, and not a whole lot this old soothsayer can do to stop the slide. My auguries indicate a small group of investigators will soon take note of these strange happenings and set forth to make things right. I'll be watching their progress, but I won't be holding my breath. Hello everybody, my name's Noah Aloha. Thank you for joining me. We're here playing Tabletop Simulator, and we are going through a full campaign actually of Arkham Horror the card game. We are going to start with Scenario 1, The Gathering. For anybody who has watched my previous Arkham Horror card game videos, you'll be intimately familiar with The Gathering by now. We've done lots and lots of videos on it. I'm very excited to get Scenario 1 out of the way so that we can jump into the second and third chapters, because they're great fun. That said, let me clarify, we mentioned this in the previous video, the Part 0 video. If anybody skipped that because they just wanted to jump straight to gameplay, that's perfectly fine. I just want to mention that this is a take 2 of our attempt at this campaign playthrough. I did have a playthrough put up before the weekend on Friday. It's Monday now. I'm re-recording because somebody pointed out to me that I did not know how to play the machete card. I'm going to carry those personal demons with me, and I've got machete just hovering to one side, looming over me, just keeping me honest, making sure that I don't mess up again. Whatever. Let's get on and move forward, shall we? We are going to draw some cards for our investigators, and we're going to read some flavor text, and we're going to beat this scenario. I think that's the correct positive attitude we should have. Before we jump straight into the card drawing, again, for anybody who didn't want to bother with the Part 0 video, they just want to jump into this first Part 1, you can pause your YouTube player right now and get a general sense of how I've modified the starter decks. And note that in the previous video we drew our basic weaknesses. Roland drew into Psychosis, which gives him 1 direct damage whenever he takes any amount of horror. Wendy drew into the Amnesia card, which causes her to discard all of her hand. Outside of that, we can just get going, I think. Yeah, we can. Ah, the weakness cards are right here. I hadn't shuffled them in yet. Oops. Speaking of which, let's give the encounter deck a shuffle also, and the chaos bag. One more thing before we draw these cards. Just very quick. If anybody wants to take a look on the Steam Workshop, if you search for Arkham Horror the card game 2 investigator table, it should show up. I've uploaded this table onto the workshop, and you can find it there. I'll probably drop a link in the description even. But yes, just to let you know that this table is available, because I know I get a few comments sometimes saying, can I get hold of the table? It looks fun to use. Right then, let's draw some cards, shall we? What will Roland draw into? What am I hoping to get here before we start? I would love to draw into Magnifying Glass or Dr. Milan Christopher. Dr. Milan Christopher is especially an excellent ally to get straight out at the early game, and obviously a weapon for Roland is important. There is a card that boosts skill checks, perception. Hyper-awareness I'm not too big a fan of for Roland. We keep seeing you cover up. We can't have our unique weakness in our hand. I am not a fan of Old Book of Law for Roland. There's a fight card, which I don't think we're going to need yet, and unexpected courage. I think this is a very, very poor opening hand. I will keep perception, but I am going to mulligan out hyper awareness, Old Book of Law. I'm not going to keep overpower. You're nice and versatile. I might keep unexpected courage. Yeah, we'll keep the unexpected courage, just for, in case we draw into an unfortunate, you know, something like Frozen in Fear from the encounter deck. One of those willpower checks. Which can be, he does have 2 copies of Guts in here, I think. No, 1 copy of Guts and 1 copy of Perception. But that was our mulligan. Let's draw 3 more cards. Okay, Magnifying Glass, happy to see you. There's our second unexpected courage, and we have his unique weapon. So we have something to help us gather clues, and we have a weapon that we can use, which gets an extra bonus from being at a location with clues. So I think we do get this out immediately. By getting both of these out, we negate the chances that Crypt Chill would really bite us. We just put the Roland's 38 special out, and then hit an unlucky Crypt Chill, we'd have to discard it probably, because it's unlikely Roland would pass the willpower test. Let's take our mulliganed cards, shuffle them back in, and go over to Wendy. What is Wendy going to have? I was about to say I want to see Leo DeLuca. There is a card that we are keeping. So Wendy, hopefully now, is just going to be a powerhouse for this scenario. Starting off with Leo in her hand is really nice. We'll probably keep the emergency cash because Leo is going to break the bank. And we will not keep the 41 Derringer. I don't like the Derringer in Wendy's deck at all. She has combat 1, so you equip it for 3 resources. It's quite expensive. It only has 3 ammo. It just gives her +2 combat, which doesn't make her a good fighter. It just negates her being a terrible fighter. You're still likely going to be dealing with -1 or better as a token pull, maybe even just 0 or better. And it doesn't get its bonus unless you succeed by 2 or more, which Wendy's never going to do. I don't like this card as a Wendy card. We will keep Rabbit's Foot as a cheap asset. We will discard Dig Deep, and we'll keep Emergency Cash. Hard Knocks is better than Dig Deep. And Switchblade. Another terrible item. That's an agility icon, or it's fuel for Wendy's special ability, essentially. There's no way we'll play this. Right then. Excited to have Leo in my hand. That's very nice. Right, before we get to playing then, let's set up the situation. Get our campaign book. I'm going to read some flavor text for the start of Chapter 1. You and your partners have been investigating strange events taking place in your home city of Arkham, Massachusetts. Over the past few weeks, several townspeople have mysteriously gone missing. Recently, their corpses turned up in the woods, savaged and half-eaten. The police and newspapers have stated that wild animals are responsible, but you believe there is something else going on. You are gathered together at the lead investigator's home to discuss these bizarre events. Our lead investigator is Roland. I think there is a strong argument to be made, actually, in Knights of the Zealot. If you were playing with Wendy and Roland, I think actually Wendy makes a better lead investigator in a min-maxing the rules kind of way. But I want to lightly role-play this also. So it doesn't make much sense for the street urchin to be the owner of the house. The 40-odd-year-old police officer, federal agent, is more likely to be lead investigator than the 10-year-old who just wants a warm meal, essentially. So I've chosen to have Roland as the lead investigator. Okie dokie then. Anything else we need to do before we jump in? I think at this point we'll just briefly establish how these two know each other. The contrivance that I have concocted, the backstory that I've made up, is that Wendy's on the streets at the moment and there's some weird unpleasantness happening in Arkham and she doesn't feel safe. She's gone to the police station and tapped on the counter and said, "Sir, maybe could I just spend the night in a cell, please? I don't feel safe on the streets." She's bumped into Roland. Roland's conducting his own investigations into events, and they get to talking. Roland invites her back to his place for a warm meal, a blanket, a night to stay on. She can spend the night on his sofa in the study, and perhaps even for the past couple of days, they have been just trying to figure out what's going on. Wendy has lots of stories to tell. Roland wants to hear them, and that is why they are in the study this evening, this fateful evening. With that said, let's move into the agenda. Agenda 1. What's going on? It is late at night. You are holed up in your study, researching the bloody disappearances that have been taking place in the region. A few hours into your research, you hear the sound of strange chanting coming from your parlour down the hall. At the same time, you hear dirt churning as if something were digging beneath the floor. Act 1. Trapped. As you leap to investigate, the door to your study vanishes before your eyes, leaving behind only solid wall. You're trapped inside your study until you can find another way out. Right then. Let us flip over the study. The door to your study has vanished, and we note that it takes 2 clues per investigator. We need 4 clues to advance as per the act. And there's no objective text on this act, so we are free to spend those 4 clues at any of the free trigger windows in the investigation phase, specifically. Our 2 investigators are hanging out in the study, and suddenly something strange happens, and now they are going to try to escape. It is the start of the game. We do not do the Mythos phase for the first turn. So, who will go first? I want to get Leo out immediately. However, to get Leo out immediately, that would be click for a resource, play Leo, and then one more action. The reason I'm loath to do that... Oh no, because we would have Leo out. Okay, that's perfect. Okay. What I was trying to avoid there is having Leo out as the only asset. Because then if we draw into an unlucky crypt chill for our first Mythos phase and fail our willpower test, we would then have to discard this, and that would be devastating. However, if I have just thought this out correctly, Wendy's first action is going to be click for a resource. Her second action is to play Leo, which costs all of her resources, but Leo now gives her an additional action. Her third action is to draw a resource again, and then her fourth action will be to play Rabbit's Foot, which costs 1. We have to remember with Rabbit's Foot, it is an accessory type item, so if we are to get Wendy's amulet out here, we would have to discard Rabbit's Foot. But now, whenever we fail any skill tests, assuming I remember, we can exhaust this card and draw a new card. That's a really nice opening for Wendy. We can go over to Roland and see what he can do. I think it makes sense for him to equip his magnifying glass. I furthermore think it makes sense for him to equip his weapon. Is 4 bullets or 3? I think it's 4. Yes, 4. That was the second action. And, do we start snaffling up clues? I think maybe we do. We can maybe even throw... No, we'll save this for the cellar, assuming we still have it by the time we get down to the cellar. Third action, we will go for a clue. It is intellect 3 versus shroud value of 2. See what we draw. -1 is fine. Successful investigation, we gain a clue. So, that's a decent opening turn. We are not in a position to advance the act next investigation phase. So if whatever turns up in this Mythos phase, we're going to have to deal with one way or another. But we are in a good position to deal with things right now. I say. without any benefit of hindsight. In the upkeep phase, we get our actions back. We would unexhaust any cards that need unexhausting, and we draw some cards in player order. Roland draws into his weakness, of course, because Roland always draws into his weakness. Always, always. We need to... let's just copy these. Before I forget, let me get my free resource for this upkeep phase, and then we'll just spend a quick rules moment going through cover-up. It trips a few people up, it seems, and I just want to make sure everybody is on the same page where this is concerned. Two things to note about Roland's weakness. It is optional. I can, as Roland, if I want, just take these clues as normal and leave this here exactly as it is. If it is here with a clue on it by the end of this game, then when we transition into the second scenario, we're going to take 1 mental trauma, and as a 5 sanity investigator, that's something I want to try and avoid. So we have the option to ignore it, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna do everything I can to deal with this. We have our magnifying glass out, that's nice. The other thing about cover-up is how do you actually get rid of these clues? If there were no clues on this location, I couldn't do anything with cover-up in the study. You must be able to first get clues from a location, multiple clues if you're comboing cards. At the point where you would pick clues up and drag them over to your area because you've passed all your tests and committed your cards and played your events, you can then instead choose to remove that many clues from your card. That is how cover-up works. We got our resource. Let's go over to Wendy and hope that she draws something a little bit nicer. Stray Cat. Stray Cat is quite nice, actually. Another cheap asset that she can get out, and it gives her just a nice option. Were we to have Stray Cat and Rabbit's Foot out, I don't know which I would discard, actually, if we had to discard one. Unsure. But that is the... wait. That is the end of the turn, and we go into our first Mythos phase. Let's go over here, tick up Doom by 1, and because we have multiple investigators, they each draw an encounter card. My previous games with solo investigator, it was just the single. When you have multiple investigators, everybody owns their own encounter card. You do it in player order, so lead investigator first, and Roland has Frozen in Fear. Which I think I mentioned. That's not necessarily... I was going to say that's awful with the weakness. It's not necessarily, because it only affects move, fight, or evade. If we stick around in the study a little bit longer and have Roland bang against these, he's not actually moving or evading, and then we can, at the end of his 3 actions, make the test to get rid of Frozen in Fear. We do have Unexpected Courage, and we will throw one of these at the Frozen in Fear test. One thing I'm going to actually do is the hardest thing I find with this card, Frozen in Fear, isn't so much the effect that it has on my gameplay, the impact that it has on the board state. It is remembering the window that is available to actually get rid of it. I really struggle with that. I'm so keen after finishing his actions to move over to Wendy's and then get into the upkeep and get some cards. I completely miss the window. After I use my last action, I then have to test for this. So I am going to just put a big exclamation mark here. And hopefully this will allow me to remember. Draw some arrows. Draw some arrows at this also. Hello. Hopefully I will remember at the end of this action phase now. I need to test to get rid of Frozen in Fear. Wendy will draw. That looks like an enemy. Ah, how delicious. It is an enemy. It's a nasty enemy. It is the Flesh Eater. However, this spawns in the attic, and there is no legal location on the board right now where it can spawn. As such, that is a freebie. Just goes in the discard, and we don't draw another card. Thank you very much, Encounter Deck. That was very nice of you, after this horribleness. And this horribleness, actually. So, that was a nice one. We're into the next investigation phase. I think Roland will go first, and depending on how well he does investigating these clues, so that he can remove these clues, then Wendy can, assuming Roland finishes up here, then Wendy can look at actually grabbing these. I don't want Wendy to grab these and remove them all from the location, because then Roland can't do anything with his cover-up. There is something to be said to just leave this in our area right now. And then Roland could go into the attic, where there's only a shroud value of 1, further making it easy to get rid of these. However, I'm reluctant to send Roland into the attic, because you take that forced horror when you go in there. I prefer Roland going into the cellar and Wendy just ducking into the attic. Right then, how should we handle this? Roland will go first. He will spend these investigating. I think we're just going to click, 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 investigate, investigate, investigate. Makes the most sense. Yeah, there's no reason why we wouldn't do that. For the first one, is it worth committing these now? No, we have +1 here. We have a modified intellect of 4 versus shroud 2. So -2s or better. I'm not going to commit the skill card in this situation. -2s or better 3 times. That is a pass. That is a pass. Oops. And that is a pass. Fantastic. So 3 successes at that -2 or better situation. Click, click. I'm not going to take any of these clues, but I could have taken all of these 3 clues. Every time I could take a clue from this location, I can instead opt to take it from my weakness. So that is cover-up dealt with. It essentially just gobbled up an entire turn of Roland's. I have noted that I have drawn a lot of ugly arrows on the board. We can now get rid of them, because I remembered to deal with Frozen in Fear. We are going to commit an unexpected courage to this, because I really want to pass. We have willpower 3, difficulty 3, so we're currently at -2 or better. Is there anything down here that I would be willing to throw? No, there's no willpower icons for Wendy to help out. Right then. We cannot commit both of these. Obviously, that's what it says on the card. So, we are testing -2 or better to get rid of this Frozen in Fear. That is an automatic fail. So, we are still Frozen in Fear, and we do not get any use out of our unexpected courage. Sad, but oh well. We'll go over to Wendy with her enormous action efficiency right now. 4 actions. She will, I think, see how she does against these clues. I think we aim to have all these clues going into the next Mythos phase. That makes sense. So Wendy will make 3 investigations. She's at -1 or better, so it's not as good as the -2s from Roland, but still, she'll make 3 investigation checks, see how they go. First one is a fail. You need -1 or better. We have to be aware, because she failed a skill test, that we can pop Rabbit's Foot and draw a card. She's drawn into Leather Coat. What would the actual timing be here? Okay, because I considered that a failed test, I think the timing of this would be you would draw from the token. At that point, you would have to, if you wanted to, discard a card to repull, and then you would treat it, and then after you've chosen whether to use the ability or not, that's when you would consider it a failed or passed test. Because I exhausted Rabbit's Foot, we're going to treat that -2 as a failed test. I'm not going to use Wendy's ability. I don't know if I would have done anyway, but it allows us to proc the Rabbit's Foot at least, which is nice. Second action. That is -2. If there's a ghoul at the location, we'll take a damage. There is not, but it is -2. Do I want to discard? I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I would rather keep the cards in my hand. I have the weakness that makes me discard the cards, so I have to be a little bit careful around that. Third action is a -1, so that is a success. And last action, we'll just carry on going for clues, I think. Is another -1. That keeps happening. Make sure it's shuffled. So we got nearly all of the clues. We have one left. Assuming we don't both draw into enemies on our next Mythos phase, then one of us can grab the last clue and just advance the act, dealing with any enemies that pop up. So we have no enemies that we need to deal with in the enemy phase. We do have a card that we can unexhaust rather, and we can go down to Roland for some card drawing. He's drawn into my old friend Machete. Hello, Machete. I will use you correctly. I think having both a pistol out and Machete out is really nice. It gives Roland a lot of versatility and options at that point. Are we going to... No, we're not advancing the agenda just yet, so I will have an opportunity to get Machete out. Wendy draws into Abandoned and Alone. These unique weaknesses are just... They want to come out and say hello. Okay, a couple of things right now. Note, it causes you to remove your discard pile from the game, where the rules refer to, in quotes, the game. That is just the current scenario, just to clarify that. It's not the full campaign. We don't have anything here, so we don't suffer those effects. However, we do take the immediate 2 horror. And the unfortunate thing about that is, sanity-wise, it puts Wendy in the same position as Roland. One of the big weaknesses of Roland are those 9/5 stats. He cannot take much in the way of horror. Wendy's stats are much more nice and balanced at 7/7. She's a better tank because of that, within most situations, I think. However, she's just taken those 2 horror, and so she's now also at 5 sanity remaining. Still, better that if you're going to see this, it's better that it comes out when you have an empty discard rather than a full combo for your Wendy's Amulet, and it scuppers those chances. Not a nice draw at all. I don't remember whether I took a resource. Here's what I'm going to do. I don't think I took the resource. Oh. I'm going to add the resource now. I will, during the break, I will look back over. If I didn't add a resource, I'll get rid of it. I don't think I took the resource. I think I drew this weakness and then just immediately decided to talk about it. So, anything else we need to do here? No. We can go into the next turn. Let's pip up our Mythos counter and draw some cards. Roland is... Okay, so we can't play his Machete next turn. He's drawn into Dissonant Voices. I'm going to put you down there because we don't need to worry about you so much anymore. I should probably draw my arrows again for Frozen in Fear. Dissonant Voices means that Roland cannot play any assets or events next turn. I may have chosen to play... I think I was planning to play Machete, but... oh well. Wendy will draw into... oh, Ancient Evils. Tick up Doom by 1, and it can cause the agenda to advance. We tick it up by 1, and indeed, it causes the agenda to advance. See what's on the back of the agenda. Your house continues to change before your very eyes. The walls have decayed, and the ground in many rooms has turned to dirt. It is almost as if you have been transported somewhere else entirely, although every now and again you recognize elements of your former home. We have to choose between a terrible, terrible option and a unpleasant option. The 2 horror from the lead investigator against another lead investigator might be fine. I'm not going to drop 2 horror on 9/5 statted Roland. It's just not going to happen. So we must go with the other option, which was each investigator must discard a card. Let's just grab this 6-sided die. We will do Roland first. I will say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We are discarding our unexpected courage. That's a shame, because I wanted to use that again to try to get rid of Frozen in Fear. At this point, I'm a little bit scared of just becoming Frozen locked, which has happened in some games. I've committed my guts cards and things like this at getting rid of it, and they have unluckily failed, and then I've just been unable to draw 0s or better versus 3 willpower versus a 3 difficulty. But what can you do? Nothing. Just got to deal with it. Wendy, I'll reroll any 6s that we have. Reroll this. We're discarding emergency cash. That's not terrible. Reason being, it is an event type card, and if we can get Wendy's amulet out later on, we'll be able to still play it. You'll note I have not put it in this discard pile, I've put it here. I'm not going to change the order of any of these, but I am going to have a second discard pile that just has my events. That way I'm always aware of what the topmost event is in my discard pile. We can get our dice out of the way, we don't need it anymore. So that was the effect of the agenda flipping. We have a new agenda, Agenda 2, Rise of the Ghouls. The floor beneath you is giving way, and you see a vast network of tunnels twisting into the darkness below. Shapes and silhouettes of strange creatures move swiftly through the tunnels, trying to find a way up. You probably don't want to be here when they do. And that has a value of 7. Let's bump it back down to 0, and there we go. We don't go into encounters because the agenda advanced because of our encounter draws. Roland drew into this, and Wendy drew the card that advances it by 1. We're into investigation phase. Still no enemies to deal with. How best to proceed now? How best to proceed? We won that last clue. I think we have to start racing now. I would like Roland perhaps not to move, just so he doesn't waste an action. But sticking around in the study now is pointless. So let's see if we can get through the turn without Roland wasting an action. Roland will investigate for the clue. He draws a -1, which is successful. Grabs the clue, and we are immediately going to fire the free trigger window and advance the act, spending these 4 clues. We are going to grab the act card, flip it. You notice that the edges of your newly purchased rug are tattered and mud-stained. Finding this odd, you shift the furniture aside and pull back the rug. To your surprise, you see the door leading out of your study. You slowly turn the knob and the door swings open, revealing your hallway below. You jump through the doorway, landing on your feet on soft dirt. The door to the study slams shut above you. The smell of burning wood fills the narrow hall, intermingled with the scent of rot and decay. So, if there were any enemies in the study, we would immediately be allowed to discard them without any checks or anything of the like. We get rid of the study in its entirety. We can't go back there anymore. And we put into play the 4 location cards that we set aside earlier on. We'll place the hallway over here. The parlour can go here. Attic at the top and cellar a little bit below. Let's read the text on these. We are in the hallway. A moment of panic and disorientation strikes as you land upon the floor of the hallway. The world spins as if turned on its head. The walls of your house are splattered with mud, and your hardwood floor is gone, replaced with a dirt path. Shroud value of 1, no clues here, however. It's worth noting that the hallway is the connecting location for these other 3. Hallway connects to attic, hallway connects to parlour, hallway connects to cellar, but none of these 3 locations are connected with each other. You have to go through the hallway to travel. We'll read the flavour text on the front of these cards, which is fine, but we can't look at the rear until we move into the location. The smell of rotten meat assaults your nostrils as you approach the attic stairs. The stairs leading down to your cellar are slick, and they glisten with a thin layer of ice. And the parlour. The entrance to the parlour is blocked by a darkly glowing, unfathomable barrier. You cannot move into the parlour. You're unsure what would happen if you tried to cross the threshold of the strange barrier, but based on its extreme heat, you sure as hell don't want to try. Right then. So that was Roland's first action. Sorry, I should have flipped that. Was investigating. Between his first action and second action, he... I just remembered something I did earlier. I paid an action to equip magnifying glass, didn't I? I bet I did. You do not spend an action to equip magnifying glass. I'm not going to take the action back. That was just a rules error on my part. But yeah, I don't mind suffering that at all. Yes, magnifying glass does not cost an action to equip. Definitely worth noting. It's one of the main benefits of the thing, actually. Roland has to finish off his turn. I would like to avoid him. There's something to be said. Maybe we just spend 2 action points putting him in one of these locations. It might be worth putting him in the cellar. Or do I just click a couple of times for resources? Maybe draw into a card and stay in the hallway. No, I am going to use Frozen in Fear's penalty. We're going to spend 2 actions and move into the cellar. Forced. After you enter the cellar, take 1 damage. Your cellar seems to have been replaced with an underground network of icy tunnels and caverns. The cold chills you to the core. The reason I'm putting Roland in here is I am concerned that an enemy will spawn on him next Mythos phase. And if it spawns on him in the hallway, I would just bring it into the cellar with me, but I would take an opportunity attack for doing so. I would rather just stick around in here and let enemies spawn on me so that we can gather its otherwise quite difficult clues. Because he no longer has his flashlight. There's 4 clues in the cellar, but he can grab clues in other ways. I can old Roland. The benefit of Wendy having these 4 actions, I'm hoping she can just tear through the attic extremely fast, and then she can come down. And then only one of us is going up into the attic to get that forced pip of sanity damage, which neither of them wants to take, especially, well, no, not especially, because she has higher base. But I would rather just one investigator take the attic damage. That was Roland's turn. I didn't remind myself with stupid scribblings, however, I did remember. So we don't actually have anything to commit here. And we've changed locations, so even if Wendy could help, she doesn't have the cards to do so. So at this point, we just have to check 0 versus 0. 0 or better, 3 versus 3, which is not great. Well, you look at that. There's no ghouls at our location, so that is a 0 value modifier. Ooh, we got rid of Frozen in Fear. Thank heavens. We'll take this out before we go into the Mythos phase. Right at the end of the turn, you get rid of this. Wendy, then. Wendy will move into the attic. She's going to take 1 horror as a forced effect. The bloody carcass of a malformed beast swings from a meat hook chained to the ceiling. Blood drains slowly from the carcass, dripping into a small barrel. Yuck. I think we just click, click, click for clues here. See if we can get this done. See if even next turn we can grab the clues, most of the clues this turn, and then try to get over to Roland at the start of the next turn. We can't get all of them, obviously, because we only have 3 actions. But let's throw these 3 actions at attic checks. We have intellect 3, shroud value 1, so -2 or better. If we fail any, we have rabbit's foot. That is -2, which is fine. And there's not a ghoul at our location, so we don't take the damage. So that's 1 success. That is a -1, which is also a success. And last action is the Elder Sign token, which corresponds to 0 modifier right now, because Wendy's amulet is not in play. So we've got 3 clues there, and used up these 3 actions. Good going, Wendy. Still no enemies on the board. We can get our actions back. We didn't fail, so we don't have to, this didn't exhaust at any point. Go over to Roland and see what happens with him. He's drawn into psychosis. Oh dear. Further slowing him down. It's annoying, but it's easily dealt with in a way because we just have to click twice. But again, it's just slowing him down a lot. But we must remember that that is in play. Any horror that he might take during the next Mythos phase will pop an extra damage on him. And he gains a resource. Wendy draws Perception. That's going to be nice. She won't need it in the attic, but at some point I think she will come down to the cellar to help Roland out, at which point she can try and grab a clue herself here. And she gains a resource also. This is the end of this turn. I can get rid of the Dissonant Voices effect. And we will put a cut in the video here and come back for a Mythos phase. In this break, I am just going to quickly go back. I don't think I gave myself an extra resource, but I definitely want to check that. So, not a bad start to the game. Ups and downs for sure. So, I hope you will come back and join me for the next video, where we will continue trying to deal with this cellar and prep for a Ghoul Priest fight. I hope to see you then. See you soon. Goodbye.